My name is Sarah Rebernick, and this is my experience helping to save some collies in Sherrard, Illinois. I'm the VP and Adoption Coordinator for the Wisconsin Collie Rescue, and on Friday evening, August 12, 2022, I was contacted through the emergency number on our rescue line. I don't think we were the first rescue they tried to contact, but I was the first person foolish enough to answer their cell phone when a strange number called on a Friday night. I was told there was a breeder named Karen Plambeck who had a large number of collies being kept in horrible conditions and asked if our rescue would be able to help. I responded that of course we would help if needed, and they gave me the number for the Mercer County Animal Control Officer, Missy DeBacker. AOC DeBacker verified that they were in the process of assessing the situation and getting the appropriate paperwork to proceed with an arrest and seizure of the animals. Since a local shelter only had 4 kennels, this was definitely an all-hands-on-deck situation, and I was immediately alerted other collie rescues both locally and across the country to the situation. The response from these collie rescues was amazing, beginning with calls early the next morning from Mitch Telson of Southland Collie Rescue in California and Vicki Willard from Houston Collie Rescue in Texas, sharing their expertise from being involved with similar situations and offering whatever help was needed. Several collies in immediate need had been removed the previous night, including 9 mite-infested puppies and 1 female with an older, untreated leg injury who was shut in a dark shed, covered with feces without food or water. The puppies were covered in crusty scales from the mites, as well as sores from an all-consuming need to scratch their horrible itchiness. Due to their hair loss, they resembled possums more than healthy puppies. They were dehydrated, full of intestinal parasites, and some had even developed rickets due to malnutrition. Karen claimed that they had been treating them continually for weeks, but the fact that their condition improved remarkably quickly with proper veterinary care makes it obvious that she was not in fact doing anything that had helped them at all. The collie in the shed was known as Ligature Dog during the trial, but we like her new name of Pippa better. At some point in time, she had something wrapped tightly around her leg. Karen's husband said during the trial that it was wire from a fence, but whether it was wire or rope, it was there long enough and was tight enough that it had cut through the skin, damaged the ligaments when she tried to escape from it, and caused infection down to the bone. I'm grateful that I was spared being there the first night when a collie in even more appalling condition was removed from the property. The pictures that accompany this are quite graphic, so some may want to close their eyes until this part is over. Karen told officers that she had been treating this dog for mites and had bathed her earlier that day, but it was the unmistakable smell of dying flesh that had first alerted the animal control officer to her presence in a pen with 2 other dogs. I watched officer body cam footage of her obvious distress as she was slowly walked off the property. The pictures and video from the vet clinic showed large, hairless areas of rotting necrotic flesh across her back, and when the urine-soaked mats were pulled out of the way, you could see even more large open wounds. All of the sores were filled with maggots, and even more maggots were crawling out from her anus and vagina. The severity of her condition and the amount of damage to her tissue was much too great to be able to repair, and there was no choice but to spare her further suffering with euthanasia. The next morning, August 13th, I drove to the property in Sherrard and waited with sheriff's deputies until animal control arrived, and we were allowed to enter the property in order to remove the dogs. Several volunteers from the area were there, including staff from All Animal Health Care, and we were also joined by MWCR members Erica and Aaron, who took a video that will play later. Outside the gate there was quite a bit of clutter, with items stacked haphazardly in the driveway, and once I passed through the gate I saw a pen of collies in front of the house with more sheds and pens beyond it. As I continued down the path past the house, it became extremely overgrown, uneven, and strewn with debris, and there were several pens of collies to the right, as well as pens further behind them that needed to be accessed by going through those in front of them. At first I thought they were on dirt, but quickly realized that it was actually layers of dried feces and hair. The smell was indescribably horrible, somewhat like an industrial pig farm but more pungent, and the rough-coated collies that I saw in those pens were filthy and extremely matted. I continued down the path towards the barn, past more pens, a slime-filled above-ground pool, and noticed still more pens filled with collies to the left of me. Every corner I turned revealed more and more collies. The barn had indoor-outdoor runs along the front side with a drainage ditch full of vile runoff and clogged with feces. The concrete of the outdoor runs was covered in a thick layer of feces, and the pen just past them smelled so strongly of urine, even though it was outdoors, that it made my eyes burn and water when I entered it. Going into the barn itself was a horrifying experience. The stench intensified, and there was trash and filth everywhere, making it difficult to walk down the narrow aisles. As I went past the first room, I saw cages stacked on top of each other containing collies. I watched as someone tried to open the door to one of the cages, and it was obvious from the difficulty that they were having that it hadn't been opened in a long time. As I continued through the barn, there were more kennels and cages filled with collies. They were standing on thick piles of their own feces, and it was almost impossible to get through to some of the indoor-outdoor runs from inside the barn. In other outbuildings, there were filthy, cobweb-covered whelping pens that obviously were not prepared for use, and the pregnant females were together in an outdoor pen. Some appeared to have recently given birth, but there were no puppies with them. Since there wasn't any food in there either, that certainly causes me to draw some horrifying conclusions about the situation. The collies in the outdoor pens were interested in us as we walked past, but once we went in, they were wary and unsure of how to react to people. It was obvious that not many had had any handling or socialization, and in their uncertainty and fear, they had to be cornered and caught as they tried to avoid being touched. Most had no concept of being leashed and would panic as soon as they felt the pressure on their neck, and we realized that the least stressful way to remove them was to carry them out, so that's what we did. Trying to reach some of the kennels was treacherous, and I almost fell several times when I had to climb over items left lying around. We carried collies out of filthy, disgusting, feces-covered pens and cages, across debris-filled terrain, over stinky, sliming drainage ditches, and up uneven, trash-strewn, overgrown paths to finally get them away from that vile, stench-filled hell and into fresh air. Although we were removing collies from the property as quickly as we could, there were so many that at times it felt like we weren't making any headway. Once each dog was off the actual property, we were able to spend some time with them while setting up transport. One collie in particular, now known as Rafe, was in horrendous condition that day. He had been in a pen with several other dogs who were attacking him. Once he was pulled out, it was heartbreaking to see his condition, horribly matted, bloody, and so terrified that he was completely shut down. Fortunately, Rafe was one of the first collies that MWCR was able to get to a foster home. We did our best to reassure all of them, but it was obvious that the majority had not had that kind of comfort before. They didn't know it yet, but waiting for them at the county facility, volunteers had set up large kennels with clean bedding, ample food, and fresh, clean water, and their first stop on the road to a better life. Upon arrival at the facility, they immediately had their basic needs of food and water met. Given their previous circumstances, I expected that there would be some possessiveness over food, but I was shocked to see them resource guarding the water. To have them perceive something so basic as a valuable possession to be fought over was heartbreaking. Several collies requiring immediate medical care, including Rafe, a group of puppies with severe diarrhea, and heavily pregnant females, went straight to veterinary hospitals in the area, and the rest were transported to the county's facility. For the first 3 days, we held them as they received what was probably for most their first veterinary care from Doctors Jeremy Joy, Tiffany Yerke, and Emily Harold and their staffs. Examination areas were set up, paperwork was started both for medical record and animal control, and as they were given identifying numbers, weighed, examined, vaccinated, etc., each was cradled and consoled in an effort to reduce their anxiety. When medical issues beyond the dehydration, malnutrition, and parasite infestation most suffered from were identified, a treatment plan was put in place for them, and a system utilizing dry erase boards was created to keep track of the medications needed for each dog. Most of the slightly older dogs had considerable dental needs, and even the younger dogs had significant plaque on their teeth. There were many needing eye medications and wound treatments as well as other issues. Once their medical exams were completed, it was time to do what we could to make them comfortable physically. Although all of the dogs were filthy, many of the rough-coated collies were so badly matted that they had to have their hindquarters, as well as their necks and bellies shaved, so that they were able to lift their tails to defecate and move their heads and legs freely. The mats behind their ears were so large and dense that you couldn't cut through them, and the skin was engulfed to the point where they were nearly impossible to remove without damaging it. When we were shaving them, the urine and feces-covered fur often came off in a pelt like a sheep's, and some had infestations and maggots festering underneath. Over the next few weeks, I was privileged to be able to assist with their care, along with the many, many wonderful people and organizations that came together to help with this horrific situation. If this had happened in a more urban setting like Minneapolis or Milwaukee, I know it would have been much more difficult to find a place for them and organize their care. But the people of Aledo and the surrounding rural communities knew what had to be done to care for a large number of animals and created a safe, comfortable environment for them. The amount of work needed to care for so many dogs appropriately required a schedule of many volunteers to feed, water, and clean. Dr. Joy was there daily and often 2 or 3 times a day to make his rounds, and his staff was on site 2 to 3 times a day to dispense medication, apply eye ointments, and perform wound care. The dedication of the volunteers and medical staff was astounding, especially when you consider that everyone was doing this on top of their regular jobs and responsibilities. For all animal health care, it was the equivalent of taking on almost 200 additional patients, many of whom needed care daily, and I was in awe of their dedication, compassion, and kindness. With all their hard work, all of the collies' physical needs were met, but equal as important, we made sure to focus on each collie's psychological needs. At first, they would cower and run away when someone entered their enclosures, but as volunteers spent time sitting with them, they became accustomed to human contact. As people calmly brushed and petted them, they began to relax and enjoy it until soon they would come up to you and seek attention. Although some were slower to get over their shyness, and potentially will be for a long time, after a couple weeks you were pretty likely to get mobbed by collies looking for pets and treats during feeding and cleaning. They started wanting to play with you and anything you brought in with you. Brooms, leashes, buckets, hair ties, shoelaces, all became a source of interest and a potential toy. The transformation they made in even their brief time at the facility, once they were given food, water, a clean place to be, and attention from their caregivers, was amazing. Although the conditions they were living in were disgusting and inhumane, for an intelligent, sweet, people-oriented breed like the collie, the lack of human contact they endured was no less appalling and abusive. All of these sweet babies needed loving and patient adopters who understood that sensitive dogs like collies coming into this type of situation will have a long road to travel in order to recover and begin to realize how wonderful life can be when you are loved, fed, and kept safe. It has been amazing to follow the journey not only of the MWCR Nifty 50 in our care, but also those who have been shared by other collie rescues who took them in. Collie Rescue of Greater Illinois, Central Illinois Sheltie Rescue, Tri-State Collie Rescue, Almost Home Dog Rescue of Ohio, Rocky Mountain Collie Sheltie Rescue, Northeast Ohio Collie Rescue, Collie Florida Rescue, Southland Collie Rescue, Southwest Collie Rescue, Collie Rescue of the Carolinas, Houston Collie Rescue, and NorCal Collie Rescue. I'm grateful to the amazing foster homes, many of whom asked who needs our help the most. Let's get them out of there right away. Tans and June went to a foster home that had experience with mill dogs and told us to send her the 2 that were the most frightened. Finnegan, originally called Quiver because that was about all he was able to do, was adopted by a trainer who specializes in fearful dogs. April, also known as Goat Girl because her neck had to be shaved to drain an abscess, is continuing to become braver as she also deals with 2 congenital heart defects and the accompanying surgery. Fessy, originally Nessie because she was as elusive as the Loch Ness Monster, spent most of her time hiding under the bed in her kennel at the shelter and would occasionally run to hide under the deck in her adoptive home when something made her too afraid to come into the house, but now she's finally becoming an indoor house pet. Dora, a merle who is certainly not an explorer, and whose fearfulness dictated that she'd be one of the first to get to a safe and knowledgeable foster home, is also improving. And bloody, filthy, matted Rafe's beautiful coat has grown back, and he is living the good life in Minnesota. The mange puppies were transferred to Collie Rescue of Greater Illinois and placed under veterinarian Dr. Kathy Wolf's care. With appropriate and extensive effort on her part, they became fat, fuzzy, and fabulous. Sweet, beautiful Pippa will always have a limp from the damage to her leg, but the infection has healed, and today she is with a loving family who also has the patience to help her heal from the psychological scars of her experience. Pippa now enjoys napping on sofas, sitting in the grass, and playing card games with her family. Each dog rescued has its own personality and stories. Beast, who started to give birth in the back of my car and then finished on my legs. Squeaky Toy, Yost's BFF, who got his nickname because of his debarked voice. Buddy, who truly was Volunteer Byron's buddy. Old Man Try, who tried so hard to capture Mitch's attention. And Beautiful Blue Eyes, Erica's favorite. All of the dogs, even the corgis, are parts of our heart forever. They've changed our lives as surely as we've changed theirs, and now they each have a chance at their own happily ever after. As we watch some pictures of that happily ever after, I'd like to tell you again how grateful I am to the many, many volunteers who rallied to help these collies. MWCR and other rescues wouldn't be able to help these or any collies if it wasn't for all our dedicated volunteers. As soon as they knew about the situation, everyone sprang into action to do whatever they could to help both on-site and off. From helping to remove the dogs, cleaning kennels and caring for them, arranging transports, processing applications, doing home visits, organizing volunteers, coordinating foster homes, answering emails, keeping up on all the paperwork, fostering and donating, with a special thank you to the Collie Rescue Foundation for its support, to the hard work and dedication of State's Attorney Grace Simpson and her team in bringing the case against Ms. Plambeck to trial. It truly has been an enormous undertaking, and I am proud to be part of such a caring and committed group. Thank you to the MWCR members who came to Aledo to help: Erica, Aaron, Vivian, Chris, Tim, Tom, Bonnie, Patty, Paul, Lori, and Kristen, and those who helped with processing, organizing our volunteers: Paul, Jackie, Mary, Terry, and Mylinda, our amazing foster homes and adopters, as well as the forever friends of Mercer Animal Shelter, and all of the wonderful people who came to the facility daily to care for their needs: Susie, Dixie, Yost, Gail, Byron, Dr. Joy, Nicole, Jera, Cassie, Dr. Harold, Missy, Denise, Richard, and many, many more. This experience was equally horrible and rewarding and has forged a bond among us that will last a lifetime.